The cave was silent, save for the soft drip of water echoing off its stone walls. It was the kind of darkness that seemed to swallow sound, a place where time itself felt frozen. On a warm August afternoon in 1979, a family headed out to Buffalo Cave, just outside the tiny rural town of Dubois, Idaho. It was supposed to be an ordinary outing, just a simple hunt for arrowheads, something families in this part of the state often did. But as their flashlights cut through the pitch-black cavern, they stumbled upon something they would never forget. Half buried beneath loose rock and dirt was a burlap sack. At first, it looked like nothing more than discarded trash, maybe an old potato sack left behind by hunters. Then came the smell. Thick, sour, the kind of stench that clings to your clothes and hair. When they looked inside, their flashlights revealed a sight so grotesque it would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Inside the sack was a human torso, headless and limbless. The body was badly decomposed, but still wrapped in the clothing it had been wearing at the time of death. A maroon sweater over a white pinstripe shirt and black trousers. The family stumbled out of the cave in shock and raced to alert authorities. When investigators arrived, they were horrified. Who was this man? How had his body ended up dismembered and hidden so deep underground? And most chillingly, where were his head and limbs? For years the torso remained unidentified, known only as John Doe. But this was only the beginning. The mystery would grow even stranger over the next decade. In 1991, another group of explorers returned to Buffalo Cave. This time, they made another gruesome discovery, a hand. Soon, both legs and an arm were found scattered throughout the cavern. Now investigators had more pieces of the puzzle, but still no name. The case went cold, buried under decades of speculation, until modern forensic science finally unearthed the truth. This man wasn't just a victim, he was also a killer, a fugitive, and a master of escape. His name was Joseph Henry Loveless. To understand how Joseph Henry Loveless ended up in that cave, we have to go back to where it all began. Joseph was born on December 3rd, 1870, in a rugged Utah territory. His parents were Mormon pioneers. His father, Joseph Jackson Loveless, came from Indiana, and his mother, Sarah Jane Scriggins, was from Massachusetts. Life on the frontier was rough, and Joseph grew up in a world where survival often depended on thick wits and willingness to bend the rules. By all accounts, Joseph was a charming but restless man. He had a knack for getting himself into trouble and for getting out of it again. In 1899, he married Harriet Jane Hattie Savage, and the couple had a daughter together. But Joseph wasn't exactly a family man. In 1904, Hattie divorced him, citing abandonment and failure to provide for their child. Joseph moved on quickly. Around 1905, he married again, this time to Agnes Octavia Cadwell, in Fremont County, Idaho. With Agnes, he would have 4 more children over the next several years. But Joseph's life was far from stable. While he was a husband and a father by day, he was also heavily involved in criminal activity, most notably bootlegging, making and selling illegal alcohol. This was years before Prohibition, but rural Idaho already had strict liquor laws. Joseph was no ordinary bootlegger though. He was clever, slippery, and dangerous. He operated under multiple aliases, names like Walter Keynes, Walter Currens, and Charles Smith, to stay one step ahead of the law. Whenever he was caught, he'd somehow manage to escape. Authorities grew frustrated and neighbours began to see him as someone who lived outside the reach of justice. By 1916, the cracks in Joseph and Agnes's marriage were showing. The family lived on the edge of Dubois, Idaho, often in temporary housing like tents. Their life was hard, unstable, and filled with tension. Neighbours reported hearing heated arguments between Joseph and Agnes in the days leading up to the tragedy that would change everything. On the night of May 5th, 1916, a cold spring wind whipped through the Idaho hills. Agnes settled down to sleep inside the family's canvas tent. Two of their children were awake nearby, listening to the wind and the creak of the tent poles. Then, without warning, the night erupted into violence. Joseph attacked Agnes as she slept. In his hands was an axe. He had brought it down with brutal force. The children watched in terror as their mother was struck repeatedly. The attack was quick, savage, and final. Then it was over. Agnes lay dead, the tent floor soaked with blood. Joseph fled, leaving his traumatized children and a horrific scene behind. Authorities quickly tracked Joseph down. On May 11th, 1916, he was arrested under one of his many aliases, Charles Smith, and was taken to jail in St. Anthony, Idaho. While Joseph sat behind bars, Agnes's funeral was held on May 16th. At the service, one of their children reportedly made a chilling remark. "Papa never stayed in jail very long, and he will soon be out." The statement turned out to be hauntingly true. Just 2 days later, on May 18th, Joseph pulled off a daring escape. Hidden inside his shoe was a small saw blade. He used it to cut through the iron bars of his cell window and slipped into the night and disappeared. Authorities were stunned. A wanted poster was quickly issued describing his appearance and his clothing: a light-coloured hat, brown coat, a maroon sweater, overalls over black trousers. But Joseph was gone. He seemed to vanish into thin air. For the people of Dubois, it was as if Joseph had melted into the wilderness. Rumours swirled. Some believe he had fled to another state. Others suspected he was hiding under yet another alias. But what really happened was far more gruesome. Not long after his escape, Joseph's luck finally ran out. He was captured, not by police, but by someone seeking vengeance. His body was dismembered with chilling precision. His head was completely removed, his limbs cut from his torso. Each body part was wrapped carefully in burlap sacks, like the kind used to store grain or potatoes. Then the remains were dragged deep into the Buffalo Cave and hidden. The message was clear: whoever killed Joseph wanted him erased. The question remains: who killed Joseph Loveless? One of the leading theories involves Agnes's family. They were devastated by her brutal murder, and it's entirely possible they decided to take justice into their own hands. In 1916, rural Idaho law enforcement was sparse. Vigilante justice wasn't unheard of. If Joseph escaped custody after killing Agnes, it's easy to imagine her relatives tracking him down and making him pay in the most violent way possible. Bioarchaeologist Samantha Blatt, who later studied the case, supported this theory, noting that dismemberment often carries a deeply personal motive. Cutting a body part isn't just about hiding evidence, it's about sending a message. Another theory suggests that Joseph may have crossed someone in his bootlegging business. The early 20th century was a dangerous time for anyone involved in organised crime. Perhaps Joseph double-crossed a partner, and his gruesome death was the price. But without witnesses or surviving records, the truth has remained hidden for over a century. For decades, Joseph's remains lay unidentified. Then, in 2015, Idaho State University renewed the investigation. Samples were sent to Ortham Inc., a cutting-edge lab specialising in forensic genealogy. By 2019, investigators had built a massive family tree using DNA database. Eventually, they located a living descendant, a grandson in California, who provided a DNA sample. The result was a perfect match. The John Doe from Buffalo Cave was finally identified as Joseph Henry Loveless, the fugitive who had vanished over a century earlier. The discovery stunned investigators. Even the clothing matched the description on his 1916 wanted poster, down to the maroon sweater. This was one of the oldest cold cases ever solved through forensic genealogy, proving that even the past can't stay buried forever. For Joseph's descendants, the revelation was shocking. Many had no idea of their ancestors' violent past or of the horrifying way he had died. For investigators, the case demonstrated the power of modern technology. It also showed that even the most mysterious crimes, hidden for over 100 years, can still be solved. Yet, some questions will likely never be answered. Who wielded the blade that ended Joseph's life? Was it an act of revenge, a rival criminal, or something even darker? And what became of his missing head? These mysteries may remain buried in the shadows of Idaho caves, forever out of reach. Joseph Henry Loveless was a man who lived by many names. He ran away from the law, from his past, from his own crimes, but in the end, he couldn't escape his fate. His death was as violent and mysterious as his life, and his story serves as a haunting reminder that no secret stays hidden forever.